Hello everyone. So in this video, I wanted to talk about checklists in Jira. Now, in Jira, we of course know that we have the option to use a subtask, and subtasks are actually great because you can break down your bigger activity into smaller activities. And fundamentally, how Jira works is based on assignee, because when you have one issue, you of course have one assignee, so you don't really have multiple assignees. Of course, you can do something about it, like maybe create a custom field of type user picker, but fundamentally Jira, the way it works, the way it was designed, and even right now in 2024, you just have one assignee for each and every issue, like current assignee. Of course, you can change it. Now, whenever there is a need to change the assignee, you can do that. And people often have some kind of a workflow where they have in the workflow different stages, and based on those stages you can then assign the issue to individual person. Maybe you need approval from someone. So I think these two are totally different things, or I should say these two are different things, but at the same time I'm talking about either using a like workflow to reassign the issue, or maybe just keep on changing the assignee itself without changing the status. You can probably keep the status of the issue as in progress and then keep on changing the assignee. So to be honest, there is no like single straightforward right answer on how to achieve this, but there is also this possibility of creating a subtask where let us say you have one big task, and in that particular big task you then want to break it up. And when you break it up, you may want to have of course those subtasks assigned to different people. Now it also depends on what exactly you're trying to do with this particular type of scenario. I quite like using subtasks, but you can also do the same thing using stories under an epic, right? So it really depends. For example, if you're working on a requirement, now a requirement could be an epic, right? Or it could be maybe a separate issue type on its own. Maybe that could sit on top of your epic. Now, depending upon how big your requirement is, like I'm sure in your organization you will have like a definition of your requirement. Now, if that epic, or if that requirement has to be at the epic level, then you may want to break down those requirements further. Now, when you break down those requirements further, in that case, you can use subtasks, and you can also use maybe in your hierarchy, right? Maybe you can have like if you're using advanced roadmaps. So when you're using parent link, usually you are working on a big piece of work that you want to then further distribute. And that particular, for example, if we take a look at if we look at epic versus, or how stories are, or stories and tasks are attached to an epic. Now, stories and tasks, they are of course attached to an epic using parent field. It used to be epic link. It is still epic link on Jira Data Center, and you may not have a parent always, and those stories can also move from one epic to another epic. But when you have a subtasks are always within your main task, and you can have a subtask at any level. That is the great thing. And subtasks are like not loose. They are always there within a parent. You can't really have a subtask without a parent. Of course, you can move things around, but usually subtasks are still within your main task or main issue. And the whole idea behind subtask is to break it down further. Now let us talk about checklist. I actually wanted to talk about checklist in this video, and I thought I'll probably give you some background. Now, as I mentioned before, when you are setting up Jira, when you are like trying to understand how this will work, try not to solve the problems that you have right now, because when you solve a problem that you have right now, you may make your system too rigid, so that you don't really want to do, you don't really want to make a system that is too rigid, although it may solve a problem right now. But always think about the future. Always think about how this will shape up, and how your teams, because usually no company is going to work the exact same way forever. They will of course either grow, or usually people like grow and the teams may not grow, but the usage of Jira will grow, right? So always think about how Jira will evolve, and you should keep some flexibility. At the same time, keeping in mind that you're solving the current problems and also the possible problems that you or your team might have in future. Now, people always try to use some apps for checklist, and there were even right now there are some apps that can bring in some checklist capabilities, where the whole idea behind checklist is that you have it is like a subtask, but it is not really with a workflow, which is totally fine. But and also, when you have checklist, I think some of the apps are like quite user friendly. You can like just do tick tick tick, and there are apps that can also have this checklist behave like a subtask, and you can, I think, use it somewhere in your workflow to check whether all the checklist items are done or not done. I personally don't prefer using checklist using any other app. I prefer using nothing but subtask. Now, one I think I always talk about this. Don't really try to use too many apps, because if you're using too many apps, you are in a way going to make it super difficult for you to move your Jira instance. Maybe you want to move to data center. Maybe you want to move to Jira Cloud. I mean, it could be vice versa. Maybe you want to move to another tool altogether. And when you're using subtask, you can report, right? Because it is nothing but an issue. If you're using checklist, you are in a way losing track somehow, somewhere. Now, of course, it doesn't really mean that you have to use subtask like religiously all the time. I always think that you don't really have to complicate stuff, because if you're using Jira essentially is an issue tracker. We all know that. We all like we should not think of Jira as a tool that you can do anything with. I mean, although you can, because it will let you configure stuff, and you can store your data, and you can do something about it. But essentially, you're working on an issue, right? That is the most fundamental thing, the core thing in Jira, and issue will have a workflow. Now, when you have subtask in Jira, although your checklist items might be too small, but you will have like the ability to track. But at the same time, I would say that if you just need someone to do like list of 5 items, don't bother creating even a subtask. If you think you can just manage it within a description, I think you should try to trust your users. Let us say you're writing a user story where you have to in your requirements, you want to, let us say, have 5 things, right? It could be anything, but list of 5 items, which is of course here in the description. Now, of course, you can get a subtask, but if those 5 items are too small, just write it down in the description, and that is it. And then when you're reviewing it, look at those items like in the description and say that, okay, that number 1 is 2, number 2 is 2, number 3 is not done, number 4 needs to be, can you please change it slightly? So if you think you need to break it down so that you can track it, then of course, and someone else need to work on it, then of course, create a subtask. But checklist using an app will, I mean, it may seem like a very simple or good way of doing things because it is easy, but at the same time, you are going to make it a bit difficult for your teams, maybe for your Jira admins, if you are pushing them to install an app like checklist. I mean, there are a lot of I'm not really going to name a specific app, but I think there are some apps. Also, maybe we can take a look at it together. So if I want, I can just try to open Marketplace and let us take a look at checklist. So there are quite a lot of apps, right? And these apps are actually quite popular. But just because an app is popular, it doesn't really mean that you have to use it. Of course, when it comes to using subtask, I don't really understand why you can't use a subtask, because essentially you are breaking down your activities. And even on Jira Cloud, creating a subtask is not really difficult, right? I mean, you will probably say that, okay, it is difficult to create a subtask, and the visibility is not really good. Of course, it may not have all the flexibility. You may not have all the columns that will appear in your list of subtask panels, but on Jira Cloud, at least on Jira Cloud, which is actually I'm quite happy about, all the new features that have come to Jira Cloud. It is actually quite straightforward. I mean, you have like the user interface is actually much better. I mean, at least for some parts, although it may not be super fast, but at least for some parts, the user interface of like creating a new issue or stories under an epic or doing inline edits, it's really convenient now on Jira Cloud. So do take a look at the native features of Jira when it comes to solving a problem, and especially when it comes to checklist, because subtask or simple list of items in your description will be fine, and it usually works. And of course, you need to have good project managers who can drive your project, and of course keep your team motivated, and of course they can make sure that Jira is up to date, and good project managers are actually key when it comes to a successful Jira rollout. All right, that is it. That is all I wanted to talk about in this video. I hope you enjoyed watching this video and you learned something new today. Thank you very much. Bye bye.